Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing. I'm Sean Martin and I'm joined today by Tony Haggerty. How's it going, Tony?
I'm very well, Sean. Yourself?
Aye, fine and dandy. Excited for tonight.
Yeah,
I know that it's game day, but I actually figured we'd start with transfers this morning. Reports suggest Celtic are closing in on 3 players this week. Right back Josip Juranovic from Legia Warsaw, Shamrock Rovers defender Liam Scales, and the one I want to focus on most, which is striker Giorgos Giakoumakis from VVV Venlo. Alison and I spoke a bit about Juranovic and Scales yesterday, so to take Giakoumakis first, he's 26, 6'1", Greek international. A wee bit of background reading on him suggests to me that he's only really had one good goal-scoring season so far in his career. That was last season, where he, to be fair to him, got 26 goals in 30 games in the Dutch top flight. That is impressive, obviously, but aside from that, he seems to have bounced around a few clubs. And in actual fact, I don't know if you remember him, but he was actually in the squad for AEK Athens when they knocked Celtic out the Champions League qualifiers back in 2018. So he was obviously a teammate of Vasilis Barkas back then. Didn't actually get on the pitch, Giakoumakis, though. He's quite tall, seems to win quite a lot of aerial duels. So do you think that's the type of player that might suit Celtic now, or should we be looking at somebody different?
Keywords there, closing in, Sean. How many times have you heard that with regards to Celtic and transfers? Listen, I think there's contingency plans afoot here, isn't there? You know, Celtic are preparing for life without Eduard. You have to say that. Mm-hmm. You know, a real spanner in the work was Eduard's performance on Sunday, because Eduard looked very interested, and I think that's with the arrival of Kyogo, you know, grabbing a lot of the limelight. Eddie's thought, well, I can do that too. So maybe that's been a great influence on him and his attitude. But yeah, I mean, certainly on paper, the Greek striker sounds the business. 6'1", and I think he scored 26 goals last season. Is that right? Did you say?
It was, right.
Yeah,
he got 26 in the league, and I think overall it was 29 or something like that.
The club got relegated, didn't they?
They did get relegated, aye.
You know, that's some strike rate for a club that get relegated. You know, on paper he fits the bill. You know, he's tall enough. You know, and Celtic want a striker, but we spoke off camera there, and we were saying it's not like Celtic to kind of start to do business without other business being concluded. You know, so but I still think Celtic need another striker, regardless if Eduard stays in the interim or not. I think a lot of Celtic supporters feel that way too. You know, so I think that's a decent level to be scoring 26 goals, regardless if they get relegated. You know, you'll find out tonight how decent the level is with obviously your opposition. So I think any striker that can score 25 plus is, you know, it has something about them and can play. You know, and maybe, as you say, maybe bounce around, maybe needs a wee home to settle somewhere and come in and do a job.
That's what I was going to say. Does it worry you that it is, as far as I can see, his only real goal scoring season? If you take that, what I usually do is you're looking at least half of the games you're wanting him to have scored. That's the only season he's done that or better. Does that worry you that he's not really got the track record of scoring consistently? Or, as you say, is it the fact he's maybe just not found that wee perfect situation for him?
Possibly, you know, players take a lot of time to settle at other clubs, you know, so maybe last season he felt settled with Venlo, and obviously that's proof in the pudding with the stats that he scored. You know, that I think Celtic, you know, you say he wins a lot of aerial duels. I don't know how mobile he is, though. You know, so...
Well, I mean, what I would suggest is he's playing for the relegated team. From what I could see, and again, disclaimer is it's a cursory look at Y-Scout so far. Not went into the deep dive yet. It wasn't a dominant team. So I suppose that would speak to how he would. Like, the question is how he would adapt to playing for a dominant team where he'd be expected to certainly pass the ball a lot more. Might not actually get the chance to win as many aerial duels, because you can see Celtic don't particularly launch the ball into the box and try and look for second balls and knockdowns. We play more intricate passing now, so would they be able to adapt to that? That's the kind of questions I would have when I look into him. But
also, he would be required, a basic requirement, to put in a shift. You've seen Kyogo come in, and Kyogo doesn't stop running. And I think that's the kind of players that Ange wants. Guys that, he said, will rest at half-time, will rest at full-time. That kind of motion. Yeah, he needs guys that will do running. Regardless if you're 6'1", you're still going to run.
That's it.
You're going to give me that 100% effort.
Speaking of people that are 6'1" or thereabouts, So you kind of touched on it there, but you definitely feel that regardless of whether Odsonne Eduard is leaving, they need another striker. They definitely need another one in, and it shouldn't be contingent on whether he leaves or not. Basically, my question is, how reliable do you think Martin and Ajeti and Lee Griffiths actually are?
I think the manager looking at another striker tells you that he maybe doesn't fancy either or.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you see a lot of things are contingent, but because it's not usually the Celtic way of doing business, is it?
No.
Looking to bring someone in when they're trying to offload someone, you know. But I'm of the opinion, and Christie fell into that bracket as well. See if you can get a tune out of both whilst they're still here, regardless if they don't want to sign a deal or not, or they want to go elsewhere. That's fair enough. But if you're going to play them, then it's the caveat and prerequisite that they have to play. They have to show you something. And I think the major boost on Sunday for Celtic fans were that Eduard gave you one of his best games in a long, long time. You know, and he looked happy for some reason. You know, a lot of the times you've seen him lately, he's not looked happy. But he looked really happy on Sunday because a lot of things clicked into place. You know, and that's the Eduard that Celtic supporters want to see from now until he leaves, if he leaves. You know, and
actually, I think
it's a win-win for the club. And
I think Eduard looked as if he really enjoyed playing with Kyogo as well. I've no doubt that there is a wee bit of rivalry there, which is good. That's a
good thing. So that's a win-win for the club, isn't it, Sean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I said, I kind of touched on it yesterday or the day before, sorry, with Andy, that Eduard got a wee bit of criticism on Sunday for taking on a couple of shots and obviously a dive where he could have either got off a shot or passed to a better position teammate. But I've all right, if it becomes a habit and he's actively spoiling moves doing that, then yeah, maybe criticise him. But I've not really got a problem with that wee bit of selfish streak because Kyogo's got it as well, that he wants the shot rather than the pass necessarily. And that if you agree, and I'm going to ask you in a minute about your lineup, if you agree that they start together again tonight, I think that's a good thing. I think the two of them, you almost seen it at Liverpool for a while with Salah and Mane trying to outdo each other every game. Sometimes it actually benefits and it leads to more goals.
See, egos aside, you had it at PSG with Cavani and Neymar, guys like that.
Mm-hmm.
But see, when you're in tandem, in perfect harmony, that first goal on Sunday was a thing of beauty, involving two of your strikers. Kyogo's pass to Forrest was exquisite, and the ball in from Forrest to Eduard, begging to be tapped home, and Eduard did the rest. I agree with you. I think the two of them enjoyed playing with each other. And regardless of how they feel about personal situations, see if you can help the team and be a team player and then do it. But all strikers are selfish by nature. They just want to score goals. So when you're in that position, I'm like you, Sean, I don't mind you having a shot at goal, but see if your teammates far better positioned. That's what separates the good from the great players. Great players see that their teammates are in a better position and do it for the team. They don't do it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I think by definition, strikers are selfish and they will always try and get a shot away and try to score goals. But the really great ones can pick out their teammates and say, do you know what? You're in a better position. Why don't you stick it away? But
got a wee question here for you from Frank Brennan, who points out that it's maybe a case of when and not if Eduard goes, but the fact that his contract is running down, and I think from January he can actually sign a pre-contract. How important is it that Celtic actually do get the business done and he does go this window for a considerable amount of money rather than letting him run the contract down?
Well, you do one or two things. If he is wanting to stay and he's become happier, then you get him to sign a temporary contract. Or else you ship him out the door for as much as you can get. But the problem here is he's only worth how much somebody's willing to pay. And at this minute, to my knowledge and your knowledge, Sean, there's nobody beating a party's door, is there? There's not.
Well,
not inundated with bids. You keep hearing of Brighton and things like that, but it's kind of, that's calmed down. So if he's going to play, and Ange probably wants him to play, then you have to say to him, you need to sign a deal, or then Celtic have to find a willing buyer for money that they feel would constitute suitable recompense for him.
Mm-hmm. You talked about benefiting both parties, and I've kind of made this point with Christie's contract as well, in terms of if he is open to staying, then even signing a contract for maybe until the end of next season or whatever, if he puts in the kind of performances he looks like he's capable of under Ange, then come next summer, if he wants to leave, someone will want him.
Yeah, of course.
And surely the same with Eduard now, if he puts in the type of performances like he did on Sunday for the next week and a half, by the time the window's closing, you would think someone is going, like, I'm actually going to part with the money here, rather than a potentially, maybe if it is a Brighton, potentially a bigger club than Brighton, coming in and getting them on a pre-contract in January.
Of course, and the thing about it as well, you just don't know. You know, I was on, I've seen that Ange seems to perform the Jedi mind trick in a lot of guys. You know what I mean? So you're thinking they might actually be liking what he's saying and buying what he's selling, and they might sign temporary deals to the end of the season because they might want to see where this goes. You know, they might like the look of it, they might like the style. It's certainly suiting a lot of people, the style of football that Ange's brought in, and it's quite an exciting time to be at the club, to see where it all can go. You know, so they might be thinking to themselves, you know what, I would rather, you know, stay here till the end of the season, see if we're successful, and then, as you say, if they play the way Ange wants them to play and they impress, that move will come. You know, so it's because you're no doubting, there is no doubting Christie and Eduard's ability. You know, and I think there was a malaise last season where they were perfectly happy to maybe run down their contract. New life has been breathed into Celtic since Ange came in. You know, so everybody's mind's like, okay, here's my bets, but you can't have Eduard running down his contract and not contributing. You know, you have to sit him down and say, where do you see your future? Do you want to go? Because if you want to go, we've got 2 weeks to get you out the door. Or do you want to sign a temporary contract at the end of the season and give us a shift? And I think if you do that, then you've won a watch, because Eduard's still a highly talented player, and Christie's the same.
I think you've got to remember, Eduard's, I know he's not in terms of a full international, but his pedigree's immense. Like, there's a reason that PSG had him. There's a reason that we had to pay so much money for him. I think it is a case of when and not if, but it would be disappointing if Celtic ended up losing for nothing, put it that way. It would be a real disappointment.
I think it'd be a terrible piece of business, Sean, if Celtic lost him for nothing. So you have to now get this situation to a head and get some kind of, you know, decision on it or definitive on it. You have to say, are you going to sign a new deal to the end of the season? Or if not, then, you know, we have to sell you. And to the highest bidder, he gets sold, bottom line. But there has to be bidders.
That's the thing, aye. And I think, as I said there, I think the best way to get a bidder, and for the player as well, is to perform on the park. So, speaking of, I'm going to ask you for your predicted lineup for this tonight. Is Eduard in it?
Oh, yeah, I think he goes, you know, he either goes with the same team that started against Hearts in the first half and played so well, and the only possible change I can envisage is maybe Abada coming in for Forest. But that's the only change I think he would make. He either goes as is, the way the team that started against Hearts and started so brightly and so well and looked terrific in the first 45. And I say, if he does tinker with that team, then I can only see Abada coming in for Forest. So everyone else being the same.
In terms of, obviously, Christie's out with a knock. Abada's just back after 2 games out. Obviously, Julian's a longer term injury. But how much do you think that it's actually how little he's got to choose from for a game like this, because there's been a couple of knocks and a couple of injuries and he doesn't want to change it too much? Or is it that he can't really change it too much?
He can't change it too much, and I think there's an element that ain't broke, so he doesn't need to fix it. You know, they were terrific that first half. You know, the only negative on Sunday was the 3-2 scoreline. So it made the game look a lot closer than it actually was. If Celtic had triumphed 7 or 8-2, nobody would have batted an eyelid. They would have said that was probably a fairer reflection of proceedings. You know, so I genuinely think that he is limited in what he can do. But the fact that he put trust in guys on Sunday and they answered that call quite emphatically, certainly in the first half, a couple of blips in concentration in the second half, you know. And again, if that happens, they'll get punished because they're playing, you know, a better calibre of opposition tonight. But I think certainly there was a lot to enthuse about and a lot to be positive about Celtic, especially from middle to front. You know, we will continue to speak about it, Sean, until they sign a right back and a centre half and possibly a left back. We will continue to speak about these things because they are light in those areas. So he is going with what he has at his disposal, so that's fine. But if you know you're light in those areas, you have to make moves and bring players in for those areas. The Celtic supporters are shouting for the rooftops about these things, so and have been for some time. So they know the answer to the questions that are being posed. It's now over to them in 2 weeks to get some kind of business done in those positions and holes that need filled.
Those holes have needed filled since before Ange got here. That's the problem. I mean, especially right back, they were both sold in January and February. It's been most of the year without actually filling it. I mean, Celtic ended the season last year with a loanee left back, a loanee centre back, a loanee right back. It was just, I mean, they could see it coming. So, I mean, I think it speaks to an element of neglect in terms of transfers, that even though Anthony Ralston's actually been doing really well lately, that he is still the only option. And it's to his credit that he's rose to that. But, I mean, in terms of the team lineup for tonight, we've both kind of said we think it's going to be basically the same. You said maybe a Abada for Forrest. So in the midfield, and what I think will be a feature of life at Parkhead this season, Callum McGregor sitting as the deepest midfielder, taking that pressure off the back four, basically doing the McStay, where if you're in any sort of panic, give me the ball, I'll be fine, kind of thing.
It's that football equivalent of the quarterback, isn't it?
Aye.
American football, I've said before, you see the game unfold in front of you, and Callum McGregor's a confident individual. As you say, he'll take the ball in any situation. You see when you can do that, and you can scan the field, and you know where certain players are or where they should be, and you know where the ball should go. McGregor's your ideal man for that. There's something happened to McGregor since he assumed the captaincy. He's just stepped up a level, and he was a fine player as it was, but he's gone up another notch because he really does, he really does care about this football club, and he wants to show, because a lot of people were doubting his credentials for having the armband. I don't think they're doubting it now.
No, I think the kind of point that most people made was, and I think this was important, that he followed it. I don't think there was ever any doubt. If you hear the way, for instance, Kieran Tierney and other people that have shared the dressing room with him, they were in no doubt it was going to be McGregor that was taking the captaincy. And there's a reason that they were in no doubt that was going to be the case. But I think the point people were making was, don't try and necessarily be Scott Brown, be your own captain. And I think you can see right away he's already going to be doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Including, which was a wee bit of a Scott Brown type moment, including leading the impromptu huddle when the fans were back after the Dundee game, which was a magnificent sight. Including the pre-match huddle as well, to be honest. You could tell he wasn't going to relinquish the grip of the game. But I think with him in that deep role, I genuinely think it seems like most games at Parkhead, cause Celtic will dominate possession and be looking to break down teams sitting in a low block and all that. I think he's going to be absolutely key. But I think you can almost feel the trust that the defenders have got in him. As I say, they're not still. I mean, Welsh, I'll back Welsh up. I think he's vastly improved with the ball at his feet already this season. But I think you can see if there's any sort of panic, whether it's Joe Hart, whether it's the centre halves, or whether it's Ralston or Taylor, they will just give it to McGregor because they trust that he will be able to keep it. And I realise he had that one wee blip where he sold Hart short, but he won in however many hundreds of passes. They trust him, pure and simple.
He's that reassuring presence, Sean. See, you look up and you see somebody like that, you're giving him the ball. That's and it. Also as well, see the two other players that are playing alongside them, they're footballers too. We've got 3 footballers in the midfield. And not just ordinary footballers, they're actual footballers. They can do things, and you've got McGregor who can burst forward at will too and contribute with goals and shots from. But, you've got Rogic who's just playing out his skin now under Ange, new lease of life. And you've got David Turnbull, who I think very highly of. I think he is a tremendously talented footballer, an ally to Callum McGregor, who's a fantastic footballer, but and McGregor has that experience now of being in a winning Celtic team, and he's got that drive and will to succeed. Rogic has been in winning Celtic teams, so they know what it takes, at that level. They know the kind of performance levels that they need to keep to produce and keep producing moving forward. And that was a criticism of Rogic, that he's not been consistent enough. He certainly hit the ground running under Ange. Again, another example of the Jedi mindset. When his man management skills, he's got it into this guy that you're a gifted footballer, go and show people. And he's lasting longer in games as well, because obviously his fitness was questioned. The guys like Rogic, so he was 73 minutes on Sunday, but he was only taken off as a precaution because he had this game coming up. you know, and he thought the game was more or less put to bed. So everything about that middle is pleasing the Celtic supporters, because there's no perceived weakness there, is there? Really?
No, not really. And I mean, you'd back those players plus the forward three in front of them to create against everybody. Really, you wouldn't think they would be unable to create against an opponent just because of the talent that they've all got. If someone's not feeling it, the other ones will be. So winning's a habit, pure and simple. Really, winning's a habit, and Celtic seem to be getting back into that habit, which goes well. So finally, before we wrap up, I'm going to bug you for a score prediction.
I know you're
scorers if you want.
I'm going to say 3-1.
That's what I had. And I don't want to go the same with the team and the prediction, so I'll go 3-0, and I'll put my faith in Big Steve to get the clean sheet.
It was one or the other, 3-1. So I'll go 3-1, and I'll say.
Let's see if you match the scorers here.
Giorgos and Ajeti to share the 3 goals between them.
I've shared it about. I've went Forrest, Eduard, and McGregor for some reason.
Oh well, there you go.
McGregor, long ranger. But anyway, I think we'll leave it there for the day. So thanks for joining me, Tony, and hope you enjoy the game tonight, same as everybody watching. Thank you.